Hey, Doug, thanks for joining us today. As we're getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Doug Murphy, a sales director over at Puzzle HR. So we do fractional HR outsourcing. I'm out there in the trenches selling on my own, but then I also lead some of our sales force. So get to learn from their experiences as well. So big believer in how HR can help companies, and always trying to find a way to help learn to improve my craft and also help improve others.
And why'd you get into sales? What was the motive?
Yeah, sales, like a lot of people probably fell on my lap here. My first, I'll say, real job when I was in college, I met a gentleman starting a company, and I decided, instead of just going to work at, the grocery store or the mall, I'd take that risk and work with a startup company, and it was the best decision I ever made. Ended up learning, just me, him, and a dog in a warehouse, how much goes into operating a business. And with that, we were doing everything. I put on a nice shirt to talk to a client, and then run in the warehouse to load a truck, and then had to do advertising and marketing. And I remember the owner of the company came to me and said, "Hey, we have a few interviews I need you to run." And he took off out the door. And I was sweating during the interviews more than the people I interviewed. I'm 20 years old and have
You're
barely been on an
qualifying
interview
them, yeah.
before. So really kind of just learned kind of a lot of what to do, but mostly what not to do
Yeah.
in business, and ultimately had to become our salesperson at that company, train new people how to sell, and really learn the impact of good solid sales strategy, and how to help clients really not just try to sell them, but try to help them, and ultimately it helps you sell. So yeah, it kind of just fell into my lap with the first job I took.
Cool. And then you went to sell at ADP. Nice, easy job there, right? That was a piece of
Yeah,
cake.
so it was over at Paychecks, right? Paychecks, ADP, Coke and Pepsi of payroll there, the big guys. But
Yeah.
yeah, I after working for years at that startup company, I learned again what it takes to do that company. But we had turnover, we had some HR issues. We had some employees were looking back, were great people, fit the culture. We had a good time together, but they didn't really help move the company forward. And if you're a small company or any size, and you have an employee or two that aren't pulling their weight, and you're spending 50, 60, $70,000 per person, you look back and say, well, over a few years, we spent $300,000 on nothing.
Yeah.
And ultimately, at the end of the year, when we're breaking even or in the red, there are some ways we could have done that with human capital. So when I decided to move on, the company stalled and started getting married, having kids, and one of our best sales rep left us and went actually over to Paychecks, the large payroll company. And when they went there, I remember speaking to our founder, and he goes, at least we saved that salary because she's not here anymore. And I'll never forget him saying that. I'm saying, well, whatever we paid her, she brought in 5 times that. But it was the mindset of a business owner
Yeah.
and cost, not looking at the sales figures and income and profitability. And I'll never forget that moment and the feeling I had saying, sometimes people don't truly realize the importance of top salespeople and how hard they are to find. So I went over to Paychecks. I followed her, and we ended up working there. I got trained more professionally on how to sell and run a sales process. And there I sold our HR solution over at Paychecks. And really, that's where I really understood the value of how much you can help a business if you're selling a service or product they really need. And if you have belief in product, and not a made up belief, but you truly have belief and have seen the impact on what you can sell, it's more enjoyable. You come across more trustworthy, and it really can help increase your sales.
And what made you go to your current company?
Yeah, so what happened was over the years at Paychecks, was selling the HR services, and actually some of the uh, directors and executives and so on, they actually broke away and started Puzzle HR. And what they did was they took the little bit of HR and services that we did at Paychecks, and they expanded upon it. So they created an organization that really was what I was most passionate about. I thought was the most beneficial part of what we sold. And I actually ended up bringing Puzzle HR into a sale when I was still at Paychecks. I flew, I was down, I'm in Florida, flew up to Ohio in the winter. It was a few degrees and it was Super Bowl Sunday and it was a dry county. So that was fun. But we got up there and I saw firsthand what Puzzle did and what they delivered. And I was blown away. And I was speaking with one of the reps at Puzzle and fell in love. So I called the CEO when I left and said, when can I start? And it's been an incredible few years at Puzzle. I really enjoy it. And we're helping a lot of businesses.
And what's the hardest part of that sale?
Yeah, so the hardest part about human resources is probably the different ideas of what it really means. HR in today's world is drastically different than it used to be. Right now, you can probably rattle off 12, 13 positions that make up an HR department. And the smaller the company, typically it comes down to one person.
Yeah.
So when they're saying, I need to worry about doing performance and culture, but I need to be a recruiter, I need to be a payroll manager, a benefit manager, compensation analysis, projects, sticky situations, compliance. I need to learn how to train and develop leaders. I've never even had leadership development training. How am I supposed to do that? So Puzzle, when it came out, said, let's tackle all the areas of HR, all the pieces of the puzzle, and let a business just tap into what they need. And it could change every week. We need a handbook this week. We need a survey this week. We need this week. So the hardest thing is probably getting the leadership and executives and owners, if they don't have the mindset of HR deserves a seat at the table, they deserve to be in those C-suite meetings. It's getting them to realize the impact that the largest line item of most businesses is human capital. Yeah. And they don't really think, should we monitor our human resources? They don't think of HR as human resources, meaning your staff. They think of it as a PTO request and a handbook. All right. So it's getting people to realize truly what human resources means. And if you can impact that, you can impact the whole company.
That's it, because typically you see like the receptionist turns into the HR person eventually.
Yep.
With no training or skill or ability and just kind of wings it.
It happens all the time. It's a relative, a friend. It's like you said, it's a person at the front desk who gets to wear that hat, and they don't want that hat typically. And they also don't realize a lot of times the responsibility of HR usually falls on say an office manager or receptionist, somebody not trained, but the liability of HR and the profitability of the company falls on the owner. Yeah. So one of the biggest risks to the company, but also one of the biggest revenue sources and driving factors of monitoring that human capital, a lot of times the owners in C-suite aren't even looking at it. They're not even the ones responsible. They threw it on the head of somebody who doesn't want it. So that's a really tough dynamic. I meet with HR people all the time, and they're almost in tears meeting with me. I'm working 80 hours a week. I'm so stressed. I don't know how to do this. I'm at home researching. Everyone's calling me. And then I may meet with an owner and he's like, yeah, I'm not really sure what she does here. Yeah. And it's the shift is incredible when you hear the two sides of it. So sometimes it's bridging the gap between HR and leadership to say, how do we get everyone rowing together? And this will be the biggest investment you can make to have ROI in your company.
Is it kind of like almost 100% outbound sale, or do you get inbound?
Yeah, so we do get some inbound now as we grow our name, right? So we're a little over 4 years old, and a lot of it has become referral based. And one of the biggest things that I learned throughout my sales career is if a client asks you for a reference, if you can't rattle off 10, 20, 30 references and go back to your last 30 sales and 28 of them say, I'll be a reference, you're probably not selling the right product. So with that, with Puzzle, luckily we've had very great success. We've had a lot of good impact. So we get a lot of referrals from our current clients, from partners that may bring us in a health broker may say, hey, I have this company, their HR manager left, there's overwhelmed, they need help. And when we do a really nice job with that client, that broker now may bring us into more and more groups. So we do have some warm sales and introductions and things like that. But a lot of it is out there relationship driven and trying to use our partners and trusted advisors to get us into those accounts.
And is it SMB or mom and pop, or is it that kind of category? Or
yeah, so it does vary. So I would say on average, our clients are in that 50 to few hundred employee space.
Yeah.
We do have a lot of companies that are startups that are 10, 20, 30 employees that they go, I'm not ready to hire a $80,000, $100,000 HR director. Could you come in for 20 or 30 grand? And it makes sense for them. And then we have some larger, nationwide 5, 10,000 employee companies that it's stability for them. It's if they can hire us to be an in-house payroll manager, an in-house recruiter, an in-house, we don't quit, we don't leave, we don't go on vacation, we don't roll our eyes at the business owner and storm out. So a lot of times they can say, you know what, you're the rock of this, because my staff could leave, quit, win the lotto, and move tomorrow. So we do have clients of all sizes, but I would say I think our average customer right now is somewhere in the 150, 170 employee range.
And what type of pushback do you get from the owner about this?
Yeah, so it depends on situation as always, but typically a lot of people, depending on the owner and their mindset, a lot of the younger generation of owners, they're used to outsourcing. They're used to virtual, they're used to Zooms and podcasts and this, so they get it. They half the time don't even ask if we're going to be on site or have an office. But a lot of times some businesses that haven't outsourced a lot or aren't really embracing the virtual world, they're saying, wait a minute, I love your service model, but you're not going to be sitting at the desk next to me where I can say, hey, Linda. So the biggest pushback typically is that we're not in-house sitting there every day with them.
Yeah.
And when we try to educate them a little that you're paying for travel time and us talking about the TV shows that were on last night, that we are very effective and driven, and we don't want a line of employees at our door that we become friends with. We want to be that CHRO, that C-suite that says, hey, this leader is having a lot of struggles, it's costing you money. I know it's your best friend, Mr. Business Owner. I know you fish with him and golf with him, but he's actually the issue. So we want to be able to be transparent and honest and really help a company move forward, not be that traditional in-house face of HR. And that's where typically we partner with an HR team, or maybe we partner with an office manager, and then it's a really nice team together.
Yeah. And is it an easier sale than Paychecks, or is it more difficult, or just different?
Yeah, it is definitely different. I believe that the services we have, the partners, the references, the track record, I think it's a much easier sale. With a Paychecks or any of the payroll companies out there, it's not, I need to use just this and just this, because you've got to switch your payroll. And we all know it's a big process of switching payroll companies, and it's a big change to every employee. And maybe you have to switch your benefits or your 401k. With us, we more act as an in-house person. So if they say, I need you to be my HR manager, my payroll manager, there's no technology switch or benefits. We start tomorrow, we start working with them. And then a lot of times, if they need to switch payroll providers or they need to make a change, then we can help facilitate that change. So a client that wants to go to a Paychecks, we could log into the current system, help move the data, help set up Paychecks, and really make that new payroll system work to the best of its ability. Because a lot of times a business sees a demo of a new payroll system, and it's just like that car on the lot. I got every feature. But then when they switch over, they're only running payroll. They didn't set up all the other features. So sometimes we can help set all those up. So we partner with a lot of the payroll companies because we can really help them shine and let a client utilize their full package. And
when you mentioned the lady that you worked with at the startup that went to Paychecks, what did she do that you really admired? So it sounds like she was either a mentor or someone that you collaborated with and admired.
Sure. Yeah. So she actually was out of the sales professionals and young people we tried to turn into sales reps at that startup company. Um, she came, she embraced it. She was our top sales rep at the organization that I helped train. We always had sales contests together. And when she decided to leave, at that point I was like, wait, she's selling outsourced HR, and it didn't even make sense to me, because I was still in that small business role. And when I said, you know what, I need to make a career change. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. Starting a family, need a stable paycheck and benefits and 401k and all these things we didn't have at our smaller startup. She already kind of blazed the trail and worked there for a year. She had a very successful year. She really enjoyed it. So I trusted her, as working with her for a long time, knowing if she succeeded, then I thought I could succeed as well, and I'd have her to lean on to learn from. So yeah, we worked together for years there. She's still there, and now I'm over at Puzzle, and we can still partner if we need to on some businesses.
And what makes a great salesperson in this space? Because it seems hard from the outside looking in.
Yeah, it's a lot of things, and a lot of things we all know, right? So we don't probably need to repeat those, but I'm a big believer in a few things. Is a term I use sometimes is strategic efficiency. Is someone needs to be very, very strategic with their time. It's easy to waste time, to be on too many networking groups and too many phone calls, and I went to coffee with this person 16 times and we haven't exched business yet.
Nothing's happening.
So,
it's going to happen next quarter.
Yeah. Let's go for one more coffee and then maybe I'll get a lead. So I always like to kind of stay present, stay relative, and stay trusted with everybody that I meet with. But with that, there's not enough time in the day to have coffee with everybody every day. So I try to be very, very effective and efficient with my time. So there might be a networking event, and I'm saying, well, I got my kids' sports and this, and I don't have time to go all these. So can I meet them before they go? Can I meet them when they get there? They walk into the event, I'm already going home. I met them, I was present, I was there, but I didn't waste 3 hours of my time. I need to show up, they're going to be in the suite at the football game. I'm going to show up to that before kickoff and talk to them, and then say, hey, no, spend the rest of the night with your friends. And then I can move on to go talk to other people. So I need to stay present and relative and trusted, but the only way to do that is to be very, very efficient. So strategic efficiency is my go-to.
And what got you to that point? Because I see a lot of people, especially in sales, feeling comfortable if they're busy.
Yeah. And you'll still be busy. And if you do it well enough, you'll be very busy. But yeah, the longer you're in sales, and if you have a mentor and someone to learn from, if you can be efficient, right, it's just going to lead to more productivity. So if you're working 40 hours, but 30 of them are not efficient, you feel comfy and cozy, you're busy, but your sales don't represent that at the end of the month there. So if I only had those 10 hours that you had of true efficiency, but I did that for all 40 that week, it's going to lead to 4 times the sales. So for me, I need to be very, very strategic. I need to make sure that everything I'm doing has purpose to it, and that it's the best ROI for myself and the company that I'm representing. So I try to ingrain that in a lot of people's heads. A lot of people know the way I work. They joke on my inbox. An email comes in, I send it out, and somebody writes back, "Thank you." And I'm like, please don't respond thank you anymore. It's done. I know you're saying thank you. I don't need to clutter the inbox with another email what am I going to write back? You're welcome. So it's very, very strategic and efficient. And even our CEO will call me sometimes and he's like, are you trying to get me off the phone? I'm like, I got stuff to do. So yeah, it's trying to be as effective and efficient with your time as possible. And it's just going to naturally make you a more effective salesperson.
Well, let's dig into that, because I think, would you call it focus? Or
focus is good. Focus and velocity are other big words we use a lot here.
And what I used to do is prioritization. I had my deals in chronological order of closure, which kept me very focused. Because by the end of the day, I never got past number 10,
Yep.
but they closed.
Correct. Yeah. And that's focusing your attention where it is. And I'm going to quote Brian McVicker. He's one of the best salespeople / business / strategic minds I know. He's a VP at Paragon Payroll, a wonderful payroll company. And I remember calling Brian one of my first years. We worked together years ago at Paychecks. And when I called him, he goes, "This phone call closes at 0%. And I'll never forget it. It was an internal call between us, and he had his list. I was not on it. And I'll never forget him saying that. And I've used that saying before of, we have too much to do in today's world. Yes. Back-to-back Zooms, back-to-back phone calls. And if you accept everything, you're not going to get to the priorities. So you need to say no. You need to control your calendar.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people that say, I got to move this meeting around because the client can only meet me at 9 o'clock. I'm like, no, you don't have a gap until 10 on next Tuesday. The client can make that work, or you find another time in the future. And it's controlling what you can control. And a lot of people lose control of things, and that's where everything spirals. But to your point, Brian, we have to make sure that we prioritize what is the most effective use of our time, what is going to lead to our ultimate goal. And if it is getting more sales in, then we need to prioritize. Is this deal from a trusted advisor that's going to close at a very high rate? Is this some random message from, LinkedIn,
right,
that you can probably wait another week to get back to? So yeah, it's really, and I color code my calendar. So my Outlook calendar looks like a bag of Skittles blew up on it, and everything's coded based upon close, priority, where it's going to be. So if there's a red or a yellow and a green comes in, it's going right over it. Red or yellow moves to next week. And typically, if something moves more than once, I probably never need to actually run that meeting. So it's really being realistic with yourself, looking at your pipeline. Reps tend to get these gigantic pipeline where 80% of it shouldn't be in there.
Yep.
But they don't want to no sale them all, because then they feel that scared sense of, I have no pipeline. But that's the reality they need to then go out there and find new business.
And do you get scared when somebody comes in and go, well, I got 50 deals?
It happens quite often. Is let's realistically go through pipeline. And I say, oh, you have 50 deals. I can almost promise at the end of the month, you're still going to have those same 50. And probably next month, you're still going to have those same 50 in your pipeline. So it's trying to really be honest with yourself, honest with your opportunities. What I do a lot of times is, if I have a pipeline forming, I will put in bold if I, in my head, think it's at all not a great opportunity or shaky. So then if I write back in a week or 2 weeks and they say, well, I'm not sure, I'm like, yep, I already knew that, gone. So I try to be honest with myself from the moment a lead comes in to say, is this a good fit for us? Are we a good fit for them? Is this going to be a wonderful relationship that will be a sale? Or are they not a fit for us, or are we not a fit for them? Let's be realistic about that.
Yeah, because I think a lot of reps get too comfortable with anyone who will talk with them.
No.
It feels good. It has the same feeling as a deal, but it never closes.
Correct. And sometimes we all know, if you don't have the true decision maker or influencer that you're meeting with, you're just having fun conversations with somebody talking about your product. And if you're just pitching a complete non-decision maker and putting all this time and effort in, you might as well have just said, here's a brochure, go hand it to the boss and see if he wants it. Because they're not going to be able to position it as you would to that decision maker. So you're better off not positioning it than doing that, because you're not going to win that sale anyway.
And when a rep tells you, oh, this deal's a sure thing, what are the questions that you ask?
Yeah. You've heard people say that before, huh?
Once.
So yeah, typically when they come in, immediately, this is a sure thing. My first thing, I'm a big believer of why. Well, why are they moving forward with puzzle? First thing I usually ask them, it's not when, it's not if they signed, and all of those will generate the same answers, but why are they moving forward? And if they end up saying, well, they just need our service,
They
I'm
love
like,
us.
no, really, they just love you, right? They didn't tell you that they don't want this on the spot. So typically when I get into the whys behind it and they go, this person's really need to step in to free the CFO up. We have the HR director that's overwhelmed and has a big task ahead of them that the owner is saying, you need to get support and help this. I'm saying, okay, they've run effective discoveries, they've learned, they've positioned our product well, then I know that could be a yes. But I'm a big believer of, why are they moving forward? And that can tell me a lot.
And if they don't have that why, or that why isn't quantifiable with either a number or a particular pain, what do you do?
Yep. So that's going to be the follow-up question to the why. So you say why, they're not going to come back with solutions. I'm going to say we need to uncover that why to make sure they're truly moving forward with us. And then we'll strategize on what is the correspondence. Has there been email? Should it be a phone call? Should we write back and say, hey, there's a few other items that I want to dive into a little bit before we move forward. And then we'll go ahead and try to take an advance to the next meeting. And go figure, half the time they're going to write back and say, actually, we decided to go a different direction, right? Or, hey, I'd love to hop back on. And typically there is when I would go on with my rep and we'd kind of reset expectations and dive in. And typically you're almost taking a few steps back to reset expectations, uncover a little bit more, and then we can try to get that sale moving in the right direction.
And how'd you come up with this system? Were you one of the guys that were going to the coffee meetings and at the end of the quarter going, why did I waste reviewing your time? Yeah.
Yeah, I remember this is probably eight or 9 years ago. I remember the comment of, I used to walk out of a meeting, and I learned this from a mentor who was a very, very wonderful sales rep out of New Jersey. And I met with him, and he was very blunt and to the point. And he used to say, I close at 95%. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, I get a yes or no on every first meeting at 95%. And he didn't want a pending list. He didn't want to follow things up. He didn't want that pipeline. And once I realized, I said, tell me more. And once he started going through that, I adopted that mentality to some degree where when I left the meeting, I knew it was either a yes on the spot or a no on the spot. The yeses, it's getting those no's out of people. So I really want to challenge them at the end of the meeting. Is this make sense? Does this seem like a good fit for the organization? Is this something we can move forward with soon? Now, again, a lot of times it's not a yes or no. Then you got to get the next person involved and take that advance. But I want to close for a no, because if I can close for enough no's, it frees me up to be strategically efficient. It gives me all those extra hours back in my day, and I can focus on the pipeline that will end up leading to a sale. So closing for a no is arguably more important than closing for a yes.
And have you developed, kind of what I call a BS meter, where you can, because most people, oh yeah, sure, it makes sense, but then they won't schedule the next meeting, which kind of tells you, well, it doesn't. If it made sense, then we would have another meeting, wouldn't we?
Yep. It's always closing for that advance, right? That next step.
Yeah.
And if they're not willing to take it, you probably know where you're at in that sales process. But a lot of reps, they want to hang on to that. They want to cling to that. Right. So that could be a close for the no situation to say, well, if you're not ready to book the next meeting, you got to think about it. You got to talk to your spouse, your boss, your cat, your dog, whatever your excuse is. Then what I'll do is I don't want to bother you either. So, we'll part ways today. Here's the information we talked about. Reach out to me when you're ready to book that next meeting. I'll no sale in the system and won't even talk to them. Yeah. And then if they reach out to me in a week or two, say, hey, I talked to the boss, we really want to entertain this. Great. Then I can move on with my sales process, but I don't want to waste my team or my reps' time on something that's not going anywhere.
Because I got to imagine in your space, time is a critical element. They're not ready, or something needs to happen, or they got to get used to the idea, and the pain isn't there yet.
Yep. There's a lot. And sometimes there's the immediate need of an HR manager left, a payroll manager left. We were trying to find a recruiter, but I don't want to pay a 20 or 30% placement fees, whatever it may be. And we're a natural fit. There's a need, there's a gap, and we fill it. But no, a lot of other times we meet with a company that's growing, and they're saying, I need to invest in HR, and we'll open their eyes to what we can do and empower them. But that may not be the time today. It could be when their next round of funding comes. It could be once they buy their new building. It could be once they get a few more salespeople in. So yeah, a lot of it's timing. A lot of it's a lot of education on the power of how HR can help your business. And then that's the pipelines that we do need to keep intact. But it's not, I'm going to talk to them every day. It's, hey, we know this is going to be a great opportunity for you. You're planning on taking this next step 60 days and 90 days from now. So then we can block time off in the future to talk.
Cool. Hey, it's been a great discussion, Doug. Where can people go to find you?
Yeah, so puzzlehr.com, right, is the easiest, but we're on all the social media platforms, right? The Facebooks, the Instagrams, but a lot of people obviously go through LinkedIn. And then people obviously can reach directly out to me on LinkedIn, Doug@puzzlehr.com. It's an easy enough email. So they're able to reach out. I love consulting with businesses, talking about them, even just giving them some ideas that they haven't thought about yet. And then who knows if we partner down the road.